I think this gives people less choices if this lawsuit goes through, as opposed to what they have now, which is every opportunity, every choice to negotiate. This is Byron Lazine and Nicole White, and you are tuned into episode 141 of The Real Word.
Word is up.
Let's get right into it. This is big news. If you're a real estate agent, if you're a broker, if you're in the industry, and you care about your industry, this is huge news. Judge denies motion by NAR and the top brokerages that are involved in this class action lawsuit to dismiss buyer commission lawsuit. So NAR and a number of these big names in real estate brokerage like Realogy and Keller Williams, who are named in this class action lawsuit, filed to dismiss the lawsuit, and that was denied by Judge Andrea Wood, who argued that the plaintiffs would have paid substantially lower commissions if not for the buyer broker commission rule. So if you're unfamiliar with this, and we've talked about this in the past here on The Real Word.
It's actually been a little while.
It's been a while
since we have chatted about this.
Talked about it really in 2019. I don't think we talked about it at all in 2020.
I don't think that there's been so many other things to discuss in 2020.
But really, this class action lawsuit started in 2019 with, what's the guy's name here?
Christopher,
our
is his
buddy
name Christopher Morrill. The lawsuit filed in 2019 on behalf of seller Christopher Moherl.
Yeah, so this seller basically wanted to start this class action lawsuit, thought the agreement that I think he was in Minnesota, if I remember correctly.
It's not saying exactly where he's from, but it sounds like there's a couple related lawsuits.
If I remember correctly, I think
sharing
that's where
commissions between the listing and buyer broker. Yeah.
So essentially, he argues that this listing contract, when he sold his home, that he signed on his own free will, was basically cornering him into buying or paying for the buyer broker commission without his knowledge, and he had really no other choice to do it, and it kind of cornered him into this situation, right?
No other choice.
I mean, that's basically kind of what he argues, that the industry is set up where the sellers have to pay the buyer broker commission and they have no options. And this judge agrees that this lawsuit should move forward. I will say that NAR and, like Realogy, for example, stand, firm in their position. Here's a spokesperson for Realogy. We are disappointed in the court's decision and continue to believe this case is without merit. There's a lot of comments. We're going to link up the Inman article.
There's so many comments.
Lots and lots of comments. I see long comments, paragraph style comments from agents on this article. I encourage you, if you're an agent, to read this. This is something to pay attention to. I know NAR said basically, they're disappointed in the ruling, but they told Inman that it was only the first round. Is this the first round of a 12-round fight? You know how these things can drag on for years, these class action lawsuits. Is this a 6-round fight? Is it a 9-round? I think it's probably going to be a 12-round fight. It's going to go all the way with NAR. I think so. I think they're going to.
So 12 rounds. Like, what are you thinking? Like 12 years? I mean, I feel like there's so many different angles to it because and each state is so wildly different depending on how your contract is written or how things are disclosed, or because technically, like, a seller is paying the agent, and then the agent is offering
paying
out
the brokerage,
right? Like, we're offering out this like collaboration fee, I guess,
right?
But again, I don't know any other state besides our own. But each company is different. Like, my listing agreement, we're at Ravis, where we are now, it was wildly different from Coldwell Bankers.
But it's still along the same premise of the broker is going to get paid on the listing side and then pay out the buyer broker, and that's. While there are some different rules around disclosure and state rules, that's typically basically how it goes across the country. As the case moves forward, we intend to demonstrate how the MLS system creates competitive, efficient markets that benefit from buyers and sellers as well as small business brokerages. This is a spokesperson for NAR telling Inman, the MLS fosters cooperation between brokers, providing the best and greatest number of options for buyers and sellers. So that's their position. Obviously, the class action lawsuit says that's not the case. In denying this motion to dismiss, Judge Andrea Wood argued that the plaintiffs would have paid substantially lower commissions if not for this, basically the way this is set up. They would have paid these lower commissions. In some, plaintiffs' allegations plausibly show that the buyer-broker commission rules prevent effective negotiation over commission rates and cause an artificial inflation of buyer-broker commission rates in the market served by the MLS services identified in the lawsuit. So that all those different MLSs. Basically, this judge is agreeing that these commissions are highly inflated the way the MLS cooperation system works, right? So if I'm listing my home with you and you're saying, hey, my commission is 6%, which you're going to tell me it's completely negotiable, right?
Of course.
But you're also going to tell me that you've got to pay the buyer broker. And when you look at the MLS, all the buyer brokers are paid X amount. Do you want to, you as the seller, stay in line with what's being offered to all these buyer brokers? I say, okay, that means reasonable. Yes, I agree. Boom, right. Sign.
Yep.
And their position is that that is inflating these
sellers' costs.
These costs, and that the buyer should have to pay the commission for themselves and negotiate directly with the agent or the broker that they're using for their commission on their side, and same thing for the seller, which theoretically in their case here would bring those commissions down because there'd be more free and open negotiation. What do you think if that were to happen, right? If this class action lawsuit, they win, and now we've got to go to that scenario. Let's just play, play out the scenario. Buyers now have to pay their buyer agents, and sellers have to pay their listing agent, and the listing agent's not paying the buyer broker. What happens to the industry as we know it?
Well, and I can't even, because I'm trying to wrap my brain around how that would all work, right? So obviously the seller is paying, so let's just, right, well, we won't say percentages, right? Don't they tell us to like talking bananas? So say your seller is giving you 2 bananas, but if if the buyer now doesn't want to pay a fee, but if you're going directly to the listing agent, and if that listing agent is actually working for you, wouldn't that listing agent then want to require some sort of buyer compensation if they're is that listing agent now negotiating compensation with the buyer,
right, now that's coming to them? And
so instead of just getting 2 bananas, that if you're signing a contract and part of that contract is compensation, and again, we know that most brokerages like there to be some sort of minimum compensation for what we're doing as agents, are they then required to then have to sign them up as a buyer? So the buyers, even if they're going directly to, because we all know, even going directly to a listing agent, the listing agent is still getting the full amount of commission.
I can tell you exactly what would happen. Well, if this happens,
of course, the listing agent probably won't require them to do.
Probably not. That'll probably be the way it goes, and the listing agents would win in this case. If you're a dominant listing agent, you'd be fine. Most of your business is built off of listings. Here's what would happen.
It would be interesting though. My only question there is like, especially right now when there's so like multiple offers, right? Like there are now 12 agents responsible for 12 different buyers. And I'm just saying, cause there's 12 offers, like, so what I wonder though, if there isn't a buyer, is that listing agent even really able to then get that seller the best price for their home? Cause then now you're managing 12 different people that are like hypothetically your buyers.
This would open up everything that's wrong with dual agency. This would open that can of worms up even more. And I can tell you right now, if this were to happen where buyers have to pay their buyer agent directly and the sellers pay their listing agent directly, 99% of buyer agents would not exist. So Zillow should be paying attention to this, because that's their whole flex model is built off of getting referral fees from buyer agents, which are paid from the listing broker to the buyer brokerage.
Well, like we talked last week, though, now they're employees. I mean, they're like a step ahead of this little decision.
Possibly. Possibly. There's a comment here that's referring to a quote in the article. The broker commission structure also ensures greater access for first-time, low-income, and many other home buyers who otherwise couldn't afford a home purchase. Think about it. If you're in the median
that
price
person
point
did
as a
say,
buyer,
what? I mean, I don't think he agrees, but
well, there's a lot of people that agree, disagree. My point is, this person that made that comment is absolutely correct. Here's why. The median price buyer, right now, because we're seeing all these multiple offers, we all know, you guys know what's happening. The median price point, whether it's 200, 300, 350 in your market, whatever it is, that median price point, how often are those buyers asking for their closing costs to be in the deal?
Eight times out of 10.
Right? Like their bank fees, they want wrapped in the deal so that they can finance it. There is little to zero chance that buyer is now going to have a pool of cash to go and pay a buyer broker. So they're just going to say, you know what? I'm not going to use a buyer broker.
Right.
I'm going to figure this out on my own. I'm going to go directly to the listing, make my offers, and not worry about that extra expense. My goal here as a buyer is to buy a home.
Right.
Okay. And a lot of people don't understand that National Association of Realtors is set up to protect the consumer, that the MLSs and the cooperation that we sign up for as real estate agents in our industry and the code of ethics that we sign off on is set up to protect buyers and sellers, right? We have an ethical obligation to do that. Now, if a buyer who just wants what they want to move out of the apartment, we're living in a health crisis, I want to get a home, I need a yard. When they go to that listing agent, they're not thinking, is that listing agent going to screw me? They're thinking, what's the best way for me to get a home? And I can't afford to pay the buyer agent and get the information that I need to actually make a successful deal. I'm just going to do the negotiation on myself. It will wipe out the buyer agents out of this industry. We will be Europe. You will see people and now, sellers are going to say, you know what? Let's even reduce your commission a little bit here.
It's funny though, because I'm seeing more and more for sale by owners right now.
Right now? I'm not seeing a lot.
What?
I haven't seen a lot, but I don't know.
I've visited at least 3 in the last week. Yes. They're all willing to cooperate.
Right.
They're willing to give out a buyer broker fee because they know that that's incentive to get people in. But
we've seen when the market gets good, and that's why you're probably seeing it a lot right now with some of the buyers you're working with. We've seen this in history. An increase in for sale by owners when the market gets good. But why hasn't that actually caught on? Why haven't, listings for a fee actually caught on? Because people don't get the job done themselves.
Right.
They can't literally, there's a million hats a real estate agent wears.
Absolutely.
The
It's
whole
so much
organizational
beyond.
process. It is a part-time job. And if you're a seller or a buyer and you actually have a job, because most people do have a job because they need income to buy,
right?
Or they got the house because they've got income. If you actually have a job and a life and kids, you can't take on this part-time job, nor do the really intelligent, highly intelligent buyers and sellers in the marketplace want to take this job on themselves because it's a lot of hard work. There's a lot of steps in this process, and they just don't literally want to do it, and they're incapable of getting that top value because they're doing it once out of every 7 years or however often they move, right? Think about it. Do you want somebody giving you surgery that does it once of every 7 years? You want somebody giving you financial advice that only pays attention to finances once out of every 7 years, right? That's why people use real estate professionals.
And will a buyer even go to a for sale by owner? Anyway.
Buyers typically don't want to go to the for sale.
Typically they don't. But again, I think that's why it's smart that at least they're offering out something to cooperate with an agent. But no, I can't imagine they would. I can't imagine I look at my kids. Obviously they're wildly younger, but I'm confident that at the age of 18, 19, or obviously maybe even older, when they want to go buy a house, you are really out there on your own if you don't have any sort of representation to help guide you, attorneys and inspection items.
What blows my mind about this, and the reason I'm surprised that the judge didn't dismiss and that this is going to go forward, because I do believe this has absolutely no merit. This seller, the lawsuit filed in 2019 on behalf of Christopher Morel, is one of 2 related lawsuits seeking class action status that allege sharing of commissions between the listing and buyer broker. This seller, to your point, had the ability to say no. The commission was negotiable. Could have interviewed. I wonder how many actual brokers Christopher interviewed and how much negotiating this individual did. This individual also had the ability to go listing for a fee directly into the MLS. Right. This individual also had the ability to go for sale by owner. This is called, maybe like an open market, right? Where people can make their own decisions. And, this particular individual could have literally paid a fee to go on the MLS.
Right. I don't think it's much. I think it's like $500 or $300. Right. I think
it's like $500.
Yeah.
So to me, with all the options available to sellers, which is everything, because everything's completely negotiable, or they can do it themselves, right? Like you can do it yourself. With all these options, it is a little crazy that they are entertaining this lawsuit. Now, there's a lot of agents in the comments that disagree with me. You go to Carmen right at the top. I'm a realtor since 1989, and I'm so glad this is happening. I don't agree with the structure at all. I believe the buyer needs to pay the buyer's agent for actual buyer representation. Seller's agent can advertise that their seller is willing on this transaction to pay a buyer broker fee. Buyer must sign a representation agreement with the fee spelled out. They also need to be 100% pre-approved. Okay. Hello, Carmen. Right. Having bored people going through home. Then this is somebody just complain. How much, Carmen, can you complain in one comment? I don't even want to press see more, and I can't on the piece of paper there, because all you've done after your point here is complain that you don't want people that are just looking, okay? Like what business, what product doesn't have people that just look. You go into a clothing store, some people are looking, some people are buying. You go to a car dealership, some people happen to be looking and getting the free cupcake and the coffee. Some people happen to be driving off the lot with a car. You're on Instagram, something pops up, maybe a nice hat, maybe some sunglasses. Some people click the little thing and do a little looking. Some people buy. Okay, there's going to be people that look before they buy, Carmen. Mm-hmm. And I'm sure you're a very nice realtor since 1989. Carmen. I hate people that start off. This is why, and I love you, Carmen. I don't hate you. I'll take that back. I don't know you. What I hate is agents that have to tell you how long they've been in the business before they make their point. Nobody cares that you've been in since 1989. Yeah. You've clearly made your money, right? Because you've been doing it this way since 1989, 31 years. Okay. What I would say is, Carmen, don't know much about you, but maybe you wouldn't even be in this industry if these were the rules. Okay. You might not even have had the opportunity, because we're at 1.3 million members of NAR right now. We'd probably get rid of about 1 million and only need 300,000. I know Zillow agrees with that number, that we don't need this many agents. Just look at what they're doing with the Flex program. We don't need this many agents theoretically. Okay. The buyers and the sellers are only concerned about their transaction. They're not concerned about our industry. This is the moment that your dues actually mean something, with NAR and these other brokerages having to defend themselves in this lawsuit. Do I think do I think that this opens up a really healthy discussion around dual agency? Yes, I do. Yeah, I think that is a real healthy discussion to be had in this industry. But to take away, I think this gives people less choices if this lawsuit goes through, as opposed to what they have now, which is every opportunity, every choice to negotiate. That
I agree with. I think as a consumer, you certainly are going to be losing, like a confidant. You're going to be losing somebody that you can now really, truly trust and feel like they are truly working in your best interest. That whole thing is kind of weird. I mean, I'm sure Carmen is lovely, and I'm never one, but like, maybe willing. I mean, if the seller is willing to, I don't know, that whole paragraph is interesting, but I think the whole thing is very interesting.
And maybe to Carmen's point here, you do that. You have some listings that just aren't willing to pay buyer broker. But I mean, I'm telling you, that better be like on the front of Zillow. The buyers better understand that, not just the agents. Right now,
I actually like Christopher because Christopher Dean is talking about many don't even put any value on like the buyers. So there was someone in here, maybe it wasn't him, that was talking about when you offer out the buyer broker, like that agent is getting that amount of money regardless of what kind of service you get, yep. which I think some people are arguing too. So does something need to be fixed? Probably, but this makes me really nervous.
I just don't have a solution for buyers to get the representation they need, especially first-time home buyers, other than what is being practiced today with the cooperation in the MLS. The banks aren't going to finance a buyer agent's commission. Okay, no. They'll be willing to finance their fees for sure,
right.
in the form of closing costs being covered by the seller. And listen, this is what sellers do. It's a huge cost to sell your home. You got to pay the state and the Fed conveyance tax, right? In most situations, you've got to pay your listing agent. Okay. You've also got to pay in many instances in the median price point, those closing costs. And then if you want to open yourself up to the entire market and every possibility, you got to offer through your broker right now today, the ability to pay that buyer broker agent.
Yeah.
Now I'm certain sellers would say, hey, I'd rather pay half of the commission and have all of the buyers, right? But that is going to leave, especially those that are vulnerable to be taken advantage of on the buy side, buyers without representation. So if you can tell me how buyers get representation, because none of them are going to be able to pay this out of pocket in the median price points, you can tell me how to get them representation, then we've got something to talk about. Right,
because then at that point your listing agent is now working for the buyer too. Yeah. So
all right, so I don't think this judge understands the industry. I'm certain that Judge Andrea Wood and the courts the U.S. District Court are going to get a real education in the way the MLS works and the way this industry works. And how it does protect consumers over the length of this lawsuit. What I'll say to agents is right now, this isn't changing anytime soon. They said it's round 1 of the fight. So you've got years in low interest rate times, which could last, we're hearing now, till 2025 potentially. You have years to get way ahead of the curve, save a lot of money, really create great brand in your community, take care of your clients before anything changes. But pay attention to this, understand what it could mean for your business, and start thinking about how you're going to be a listing agent first before everything. Right?
Period.
All right. Racket number 2. And just going back to this, I do think we need to have more discussion around dual agency. I think there is a lot that could be fixed in dual agency. That's when things get really, really bad.
And that was one of the arguments in there too. Oh, actually, it wasn't in this article. There was a follow-up article in Inman that came out actually this morning, the day after this ruling was announced, and they were talking to other people, and it was talking about, is it dual agency, or are we going back to the way that we were, but just like with more disclosure. But I think dual agency could open, if dual agency isn't figured out, it could open us all up to even more lawsuits.
Oh, absolutely.
In the future, for sure.
To me, dual agency is the one thing that needs the most fixing in this industry, not this. Because listen, you had said it before we got on the air, like, oh, well, buyers could go and they could, maybe they're not going to go hire an agent to represent the whole transaction.
But like a consultant.
Maybe they're going to hire a consultant. Really? You're going to, because listen, people don't even want to pay the $500 for the inspection half the time.
Right.
Now all of a sudden they're going to have thousands of dollars to pay someone really to consult. I've heard this before in my past life, this consultant bullshit.
Yeah.
About,
well, you want to do the consultant thing.
No, listen, in my past life, I heard about this. Like, let's become consultants and charge residential buyers a fee. You're not going to have any business. You'll be out of business.
Yeah.
Residential home buyers, people looking to buy a home, don't have thousands of, this isn't a public traded company. This, Mr. and Mrs. Smith coming over to buy a home. These are people trying to buy a home. They're not going to have thousands of dollars to pay someone a consultant fee. They may have $500 for someone to run a comp. It's called an appraiser. Okay. Racket number 2, out of state buyers 5 tips for helping them in a hot seller's market. You know the deal. We're going to go through these 5. This is an Inman article. We'll link it up. John Glutch. And we'll go through these 5 and we'll say if they're a racket or not.
Okie doke.
All right. So out-of-state buyers, this is 5 tips for helping them in what's a hot seller's market. Certainly in our market, it is just that.
Yeah.
Number 1, have a well thought out initial phone consultation. I would say that could be Zoom, that could be FaceTime.
Well, that could also just be a telephone call too.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, obviously it can be face to face, but I definitely do agree. I think that a phone conversation is wildly important, especially if they're not living. And it goes through. I mean, especially if they're not living in this. Obviously they're not living in this area, or if they're not familiar with this area. Some though out of town buyers are actually like coming home. Yeah. So they are pretty familiar with it. But I think you really need to get to the bottom of, are they familiar? Do they know where they want to be? What is important to...
You should have your 19, your 15, your however many questions that you ask every single time that you rinse and repeat as a true buyer consultant that's maybe going to get paid from their buyer. You should have a system how you go through extracting the information from this buyer who's now moving into your state. Hey, how long do you plan on being in the state? Is this a long-term move for you? How long do you plan on holding the house? What do you know about the towns you're interested in? Are you picking just houses on Zillow, or are you picking towns? Right? There's a lot of information you want to extract to help them through that process. So not a racket.
No, not at all. I think that's wildly important.
Number 2, follow up often during the get to know you stage. What do you think? Follow up often.
I don't understand. Keep reading.
So during the first phone call, I typically explain that we are now entering the get to know you phase of the process. I often ask them via text or phone calls for feedback, what they're liking, not liking. So probably sending emails home and stuff.
Oh, yeah.
So following up often to basically, get even more information. Don't assume everything is okay. You might be sending them dozens of emails with homes they don't like, as they hunt for what they do like on Zillow or with another agent. I
mean, that's important with any buyer, is to figure out what they like. What I guess the most difficult part here is that I'm an agent that if it's on your list, I want to show it to you. I can't tell you how many times buyers have wanted to take things off their list and then we go look at them and then they end up buying them. So I do think that that's a wildly important part of it. But I think that maybe from there, it's really important for you to sort of set up maybe like an A and a B, because I do think that even if that maybe isn't something that they would typically want to see, it's on their list for a reason. So if it's still available, I would still include it on a tour.
I think he's right on. Well, in the first tour, you got to see more houses than maybe you just think you're interested in.
Yeah, but the follow-up is important.
I think the follow-up is really important, because when they initially start this process, they have that first phone call with you, they are now going to go to the internet and start looking up all kinds of stuff. They're probably going to get connected with a dozen other agents through places like Zillow or wherever the case may be, and they're going to be getting all kinds of information. And you want to make sure you're answering the questions that are naturally going to pop up for them as they're digging deeper into this process. Number 3, plan a trip for house tours.
Obviously.
Yeah. Duh. I would also say, especially if they're out of state, plan that trip where it's like, hey guys, are you going to have time to, have lunch with me? I'd love to have lunch with you guys downtown. I know you're looking in, X town, and we've got a downtown, and we can walk to this and do that and check out a little bit. I'd give them a little bit more than just the home tour if they're out of town.
Oh, you have to do more than a home tour. I mean, sometimes even with the first tour, if they have time, I'm really doing maybe just like 1 or 2 houses in each town that they're interested in, so that we can actually then try to narrow down a town, so that their next visit, you can really do like the 8-house tour in that town and then get a good sense of like the entire town. But
unfortunately, what we see a lot of times with buyers that are out of state is they're up against the schedule.
Yeah, there's not enough time. But
right.
I also try really hard though to tell, they have to make time. This is important. Yeah. If you're coming up and you want to see 8 houses in 3 hours, there's no way that we're going to be able to achieve that effectively. I mean, bring snacks at the very least, but you're going to need it. I feel like for it to be helpful, at least 2 days.
Make offers on homes they like even before they come to town.
This one makes me nervous.
They like.
Yeah.
I like that on Zillow.
I mean,
this is terrible advice.
I agree. I mean, even as a listing agent, if someone is giving me an offer sight unseen, there are so many contingencies in that contract that allow that buyer to back out, where it really kind of even puts my seller in like a really it's just tight predicament too. Oof.
I mean, when I'm representing the seller, I'm representing the listing, and an offer comes in, somebody sight unseen, I have a real conversation with that seller. Like, hey, here's a great offer. Sure. They've never seen the property. When they come for the first time in inspections and they've got that inspector telling them this and they're taking it all in for the first time, that's a real risk factor for you, the seller, to take this and then now have to go back onto the market after it falls through, because then they don't like it as much as they did. I'm looking. I did
have a buyer this year though that bought their sight unseen, but they actually never even saw the house until after it closed. Mm-hmm. So there wasn't even anything in between like the offer and the closing that would have even like that they would have stepped foot in it to like. But that's the beauty of right now though. There's FaceTiming, there's Zoom calling, there's so many things that these buyers can actually see, where I don't think it would necessarily be as unseen as maybe in the past. But
I'm constantly looking at properties, on the MLS in Florida. And when I'm down there, I'm getting in and I'm looking at them in person. And very often, the ones that I thought I was really going to like, and these are in communities that I know the floor plans. I know a lot about the community. Mm-hmm. I know a lot about these homes, and that, however many different types of floor plans are being offered, because these communities, you have like, 6 or 7 different floor plans and they're just kind of rotating them through. I know a lot about them, and so often are the ones that I think I love online, when we go through them, are not the case.
Right.
The floor plan is not what I thought it was on, even though I can see the floor plan, it doesn't flow the same way in real life.
No, you got to be in there.
Or it's just, this one looks really clean and it's really dirty. I'm going to have to gut out the whole place to just get rid of this person's filth.
Yeah.
There's a lot of that you just don't see through photos. The other thing is, the only time I would do this is in a situation like that. Like if you have been to every single floor plan in a community, that community inside and out.
So it's not like you're making the offer before you've never been there.
You have so much information on the builds, on the floor plans.
And that one comes up.
Of the community. Yeah. That one comes up, it's going to sell, but you're willing, if it's dirty, filthy, disgusting, to do the work to make it not dirty, filthy, disgusting. Like, I don't think people understand that. There are some places that are so dirty, you literally got to gut the place to make it undirty.
Well,
that is a true statement. Okay. I've seen them plenty of times. All right. So I think that's terrible advice. Anytime people telling you to make an offer before you get there.
Yeah.
Oh, the market's moving fast. Just make offers. No.
Oh, no.
You end up in a house you hate, and then you're selling in 2 years, and then you're taking a 20% haircut because you got to pay all these buyer and seller fees when you go to sell it. All right. Number 5, assume they won't find a house on their first visit and plan accordingly. Yeah.
That just goes along with any buyer. I mean, if you're going in thinking it's going to be a one and done, that's silly. Especially, I feel like especially with these buyers that are coming in from out of state, it's really kind of, you're really their first introduction to this area. I mean, God forbid they pick a town that you didn't give them enough time to figure out if they really liked it, not you as the agent, that they really liked. Then you're stuck with that review afterward. You're stuck with those conversations 3 years later that's talking shit because like you as an agent like misdirected them and didn't. I mean, you cannot push anybody on their first visit.
I've lived in Connecticut, born and raised my entire life. I've lived in really 2 counties, New London County and New Haven County. Mm-hmm. I know Middlesex, it's right in the middle of these 2 counties. Yep. I know that very well. If I were to move over to Fairfield County next month, and like we've been to Fairfield County, we spent time, we know Fairfield County, we know the towns, we know a lot about Fairfield County. We don't work in Fairfield County right now, but we know a lot about it. I don't know nearly enough of any particular town, even though I've been here my entire life, to go and make a decision on buying a home. I'd have to really focus in on the schools because, I've got daughter, one on the way that is going to school. I'd have to really understand the town dynamics. I'd want to understand the politics a little bit. I'd want to understand the history of how they've run the town, where they've spent the money. All that kind of stuff would be important to me as a buyer, and I would be in no position to buy without gaining that knowledge of any specific town or county.
Right. Yeah. So,
right.
I mean, so that one's not a racket, but I do think that
I agree.
I think that that's just a given.
4 for 5, John. 4 for 5 non-rackets. Good job. Well done. Good article. We'll link that one up. And our Marketeer of the week is from Realtor Mag.
Gotta.
You know who picked that one. Disinfection rooms become trending luxury amenity. So this
is where we've come.
This trend of disinfection rooms.
This is where we are.
Is our Marketeer of the week. The reason why this, after you sent it, spoke to me in terms of being the Marketeer is what they talk about here a couple paragraphs down.
Well, there's a few paragraphs in there that are important. Yeah, well, even they're talking about in Miami Beach.
Yeah, that's an apartment building. Yep.
Yeah, well, even the beaches, though, they have people that go out and clean out on the beaches. They're like butlers, cleaning butlers, I think they're calling them.
The Continuum on South Beach in Miami has taken several actions to increase disinfection in its apartment building. For example, it's offering sanitizing butler to disinfect beachfront furniture and table surfaces after each use. The butler can disinfect lounge chair cushions using a special sanitizing formula. All these special sanitizing formulas.
They're so special. They're so good.
There's going to be so much
beautiful
special like health issues that we find out about 10 years from now.
Oh
with
my
these
gosh.
Special sanitizing
we all get so sick at some point. I mean, we're so clean. We were talking about it before. We're like, why weren't they cleaned before?
Yeah.
Why weren't those outdoor furnitures being cleaned before?
I think if you have a multi-family apartment building, if you have a condo building that has a lot of common space, shared hallways, this could be a huge marketing advantage for you as opposed to the other options that people are looking at apartment buildings and condos.
Well,
but if you're selling a single family home, this is stupid.
I think it's going to be really important for cities. So obviously we've been talking about people leaving New York so I think that for those landlords, they're going to have to put something in there so that residents want to come back.
Yeah.
I do think it's also important because we've talked about it too, because we have a condo complex that is in a building with an elevator.
Yeah.
So we were actually kind of maybe a little concerned, like why would they move from New York to move back into sort of another building that they're running from, where again, like even then in those sort of situations, maybe that becomes part of your amenity. Hey, leave the city, come here. We've got you covered,
right.
You know? So I do think that
Yep, I agree.
It is a trend, but we also did discuss like, is this like a long-term move? I don't know. I don't know that
UV lights that kill germs in common areas. I think even after we get through what we're living through right now, like the height of a pandemic, and we're not focused as much on this type of stuff. I think for a large multifamily or an apartment building or a condo building, there could still be...
Well, it should always have been.
A lot of advantage, especially in 10 years from now. Everybody that lived through this it's gonna be top of mind. You could have a marketing advantage. So I feel like if you're in one of those common buildings and you're a developer and you're putting this in now and you're thinking, well, is this even going to be relevant in 2 years? I think it will be relevant in 2 years because everybody's going to remember this, moment in history. And I think when you're moving into a building, it will be a perk to know that the germs that others are bringing in, you never think you're bringing germs in. I don't bring in any germs. But the germs that everybody else is bringing in are going to be UV light and killed on the spot in these common areas. And I think it could bring some peace of mind. I do believe that at some point we're going to go back to being the dirty, filthy humans that we all naturally are.
But I do think for right now, I think it's important. I think it's smart. Anyway.
All right.
That was a long one.
That was a long one.
I feel like I need to stretch.
Your feedback if you're an agent on the lawsuit. We're going to be talking about this, I feel like, for years until it gets settled. We haven't talked about it a lot in 2020. NAR, the brokerage community, they lost the first round. Where's this going in the future? Love your thoughts. And whatever else you got.
That's it.
All right, guys. Keep it real.
See ya. And that's a review.
That's a review.
And that's a review.